Not often when you're 40 games down in a tournament do you have a situation where two teams haven't even faced each other once. And remember, this is a derby of two cities that are just a couple of 100 kilometers separated by the National Highway number 8. So the NH8 derby all set for the first time this season. MPL presents Cricbuzz Live to bring you all the preview of what lies ahead. A new combination in the studio for the first time, Ajay Jadeja with Shaun Pollock. Gentlemen, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Good to be again.
Should be an interesting matchup, given the fact that we haven't seen the matchup this season yet so far.
Yeah, and two teams have had totally different paths till where they've got here. Delhi's been exciting this year for me, and they've played differently. They've had the approach that they've had. They've had the freedom of, you all have all these young players in there, but they've been let loose and they've been playing with freedom. And on the other side, you have the Rajasthan Royals, all planned every time, and they try and make those moves with those jigsaw puzzles that they have, and the puzzles haven't come right for them. But it's been wonderful watching Delhi this year.
But Shaun, while the Rajasthan Royals, of course, are in the new avatar of pink, the Delhi team, as we were chatting just before the show, with a new name completely. And obviously, it's been rubbing off. They're looking like playing better cricket at the top of the table. Unfamiliar territory.
Yeah, it is unfamiliar for them. And if they win today, it's a real step in the right direction for Delhi. So, I mean, it's a big team, aren't they? And they've prided themselves on performing well domestically over the years. And they haven't managed to carry that through to the IPL. I think them and RCB have probably been the two disappointing franchises over the years. So it's nice that they've got in rookies. Ricky's obviously doing well, and when you go in and you coaching a RPL side, it's sometimes nice to have the youngsters there because they buy into everything that you want to try and everything you want to do, and they've got energy and they're keen to go. And overseas performer KG's done really well for them and bowled nicely. But I think it just settled them down. If they can win this game today, and they can start thinking about the playoffs, and everything will fall into place. But they want to perform and play nasty against Rajasthan, considering they've got to play them twice. So, if you win that first game and you've got the next game in a couple of days' time, it almost seems like the momentum's with you.
Certainly does. Let's just show you where things stand at the moment, because for the Delhi Capitals, as we said, unfamiliar to be in the top three, and that's exactly where they are. And a win tonight will put them at the very top, because have a look at their net run rate. No matter even if they win by a single run or by a wicket, it takes them to the top. Level on points with Chennai, but ahead on net run rate. For the Rajasthan Royals, it's critical. This is the stage where you lose one game and you're already talking about mathematics. So I think between the two, Delhi can still afford the odd loss. Rajasthan cannot.
Yes, I mean, if you look at it that way, yes, they can afford that loss. But what Shaun just said, they're going to play two games again the same side. So if you lose that one game, what are you? 6-3 at this moment. 6 wins for Delhi, 3 for Rajasthan. Rajasthan has one game less. So if they win these two, then they're virtually almost equal to you. And we're talking about a team who's going to be at the top. But, for Delhi, I feel it's a much more important game in the sense that they're in that table, but it's about, what they do. It's not just to qualify. Any team who's out there is looking to win this tournament. So at this stage, if they can, get this win, it'll just free their players even further. I think, over the years, if we see in the IPL, I feel it's more the mind and what's the mindset of the team is at that particular moment. Because it's a total different game. You grow up playing for your state side. You grow up playing in a cricketing culture which is totally different from a franchise culture. And for the younger boys, if they get into that rut and you start worrying about things, and then it all goes wrong. So if they get past this one, I'm looking at this team to go all the way, and probably because they're thinking of winning. They're not thinking of qualifying anymore. This Delhi sides look different. They've been talking differently and playing differently.
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my next question, but Ajay sort of answered it from his point of view. There was a time when you're thinking we're not even in contention. It all started in season 1 when they made it in there but didn't quite go that extra step. Now they've got a real chance. As you said, qualifying is one thing for the playoffs, but it's that number 1 spot.
Yeah, I also remember that season 1 and the quality players they had in that unit. And if you had said to me that Delhi wouldn't have won the RPL by now, with that team they started off with, I would have said, you've got to be joking.
Because it gave everyone away.
Yeah, well, that was part of the battle. But I think, obviously the knockout stages is probably the fairest system that you've got in world cricket with regards to 1 plays 2, and the winner goes straight to the final. And if you lose, you get the second bite at the cherry. And that's why these games become so important for Delhi. If they can win 2 of them and make sure they're in those top 2, it just gives you that little buffer that if you have a bad game, if you have a bad outing, there's still a second chance that you can get yourself into the final and still have a chance to win the tournament. So it's vitally important, and that's will be their thinking. And at the stage you start watching, you can't help it. When you're in those RPL teams, you start watching and thinking, well, if they lose to them and we beat them and they lose to them, then we could go through first. And you start to, all the permutations come out, and it is quite difficult to just keep your side focused on the job at hand. But I'm sure Ricky would have been chatting to them and say, come on, let's focus on these guys. They've got the overseas players leaving. They'll be keen to do a big performance, but we can beat them.
The only thing we haven't had as an X factor is rain. But we won't go there.
and they've actually managed to keep their side together. I mean, they've had that last win against, which was the last game, but they won that last game. But with wins and losses, the percentage that they've had, they've still managed to keep the same batting order. They've been, talk about, Prithvi Shaw throwing it away or how somebody else is playing. And we've seen that in the IPL. What happens is, you start making those changes. And probably that's why I'm looking at this game and saying it's even more important, because it will allow the team management, the players and the captains to keep that going. Because you lose here and then you start worrying again. And all those mistakes that you made in the last few games then come into play.
Yes, of course. And when it comes to mistakes, let's remind you again that it is the home side who are batting first. They've been put into bat by the Delhi Capitals, who have preferred to chase, even though it's chasing that gave them that one nightmare in Mohali. And certainly they'll want to put that aside and look ahead. Before we show you the teams, it's not just Steve Smith, it's not just Shreyas Iyer who had to choose a team today. Plenty of you out there had that headache of figuring out which super team we're going to put in. In case you haven't done that, that's the way to do it. Download the MPL app and get to www.superteam and figure out what your team is going to be. 11 players. Get yourself a captain and a vice captain, and you can start scoring. We, of course, are playing it right here. We've got a keen competition going as well for the MPL Super Couch, but that we'll come to at the end of the show. For now, let's go to the 2 teams who were selected to be on the park, starting with the Delhi Capitals, who have made one solitary change, which is Chris Morris coming in for Sandeep Lamichhane, who bowled beautifully in Delhi against the Kings 11 Punjab, but it was horses for courses. I guess they've looked to the surface. Chris Morris can always be useful. They've actually been giving him the new ball, which is something we didn't see in previous years, Shaun.
Yeah, he's got that ability to shape it up front, and that's one of his big skills, and something that South Africa have tried to employ, particularly in their version of the T20 format. And I think what might have influenced it, you have a look at how Jeffrey Arsh has gone, and you think about the bounce and carry that you've seen him extract from that surface, and you think Morris, similar kind of height bowler, and maybe he can have an impact on them. So that might have influenced them, whereas the Delhi pitch can sometimes be a bit low and difficult to get those spinners away. And that's the only change in the game. The other guys are full of confidence from the fact that they've been kept and retained in the side. And I think from a Rajasthan perspective, they'll probably be a little bit disappointed that they've only played 9 games and this will be their 10th game and then their players go off, whereas Delhi, for example, have got their players at least to 11 or 12 or 13 games. And it hasn't worked out nicely for them. But I think there will be some bounce in that surface from the pitch report that we saw, and Morris can extract that and get some shape.
Yeah, and from the Rajasthan point of view, an interesting reaction from Steve Smith. Guess what? We're not changing our team, because that's a problem that they've had. A couple of franchises have. They definitely have had that. They've been throwing in different players. They've gone with a settle 11 2 games in a row.
Yeah, because when they made that change, when they changed the captain, they changed that side. So they decided to play this in a different way, because you've got to approach it in a different way depending on the players that you have. And they had a victory and they just want to go about doing the business the same way. Because there isn't a big change in the wicket. The last game was also played here. In fact, they all feel, what we heard was that they feel it's even a better track to bat on. So you don't want to make those changes. You've chased down a total. He got some runs. He was there at the end. So that will give a lot of confidence, because he's probably the key to that side. We have young players around him, but he's the key who has to hold the team together.
And they're going to have force changes after this game, aren't they?
They're
Two guys are departing, so
enjoy
just try and keep the calm for now.
Enjoy it while it lasts. But it's also going to be a very interesting battle of what arguably, no matter who your favourites are, is the battle of the 2 best pace bowlers in this year's tournament. One side you have Jeffrey Archer, we're going to call him that from now on, now that Shaun started the trend. Jeffrey Archer against KG Rabada is someone who Shaun knows a thing or two about, and he's certainly been very impressive, but you'll have to turn around and say no surprise there.
Yeah, no surprise. I mean, KG's been such a find for South Africa. He's brilliant in all formats, whether it's test matches, one days, T20s. He's just got that skill, he's got that self-belief, he's just athletic, and he hardly ever gets injured. Just keeps running in, and he's got that ability to bowl some good Yorkers. We saw that power, what not the extra over.
Extra over.
Yeah, that he managed to think, what's it called?
Super over.
Super over.
There you go.
Trying to think what's it
I couldn't pull it out at the brain, but
It is the extra over.
yeah,
All right.
Yeah.
it is. But that's what he's got, and that's what he possesses. He seems so calm as well when he does perform at the best level. So no surprise. I think he'll be really happy about the way he's gone. It's almost been 2 for 20, 2 for 20, 2 for 20. He just keeps picking up those wickets and doing the job. So Delhi will be very happy with what he's done so far. And Archer's a real find. I mean, I think in years to come he'll be a fantastic performer. Nice tall, nice action from an injury perspective. It looks like one of those actions that's repeatable and not going to cause too many headaches and stress fractures or anything along those lines. And it'll be very interesting to see how his career takes off. I mean, he's starting. KG's almost peaked at a young age, but Archer's starting to find his wings, and it'll be interesting to see how he flies.
We're going to have some numbers in a moment, but before that, Ajay, I want to get you into his whole mental state. We had Michael Vaughan with us, who was, of course, very unequivocal in saying that I don't care. Whatever squad's been named now, he's going to be in the World Cup. What is going through Jofra's mind at the moment?
Look, he's got an opportunity. He's been picked for England. He's playing against Pakistan. So, you got to make your way through. I mean, I know he's a good player and everybody feels he should be in there. But there is a side that's been playing before he arrived. And they've been doing well. They're at the top of the table. They're world #1 side. So he's probably thinking, look, I have an opportunity to get into that side, but I need to earn it as well. But today, I'm not too sure whether he's thinking about that. Today, he'd probably be thinking about what he needs to do today.
But I think what Archer's done is he's created a name for himself in the T20 format. And very much you can have the likes of guys who perform well in one-day cricket and test cricket, they can struggle. So what we've seen from him is 4 overs. Yes, you come in and bowl an over, bowl 2 overs. But in the one-day format, you do actually have to structure together 5 or 6 overs sometimes, like an extended spell. Can he do that? I think we see a lot of exposure where he plays against the international guys in the Big Bash. He comes to the RPL and plays. And the raw ingredients, he gets plenty of ticks from me from that perspective. But can he take that form into the one-day format? And will it be disruptive for England if they do pick him into the squad? I think those are the questions that they need to ask. And that's why the management have to think about it carefully. If you just went with the fans' favourite and the flavour of the month, in he goes.
Do you think that's the reason why England are being a little cautious about it? Good point.
They want to see. They want to see what he can do against Ireland. And
because one is that one-day game, and two is that what role is he going to play? What happens is sometimes you play for a certain team, and the team decides to play around you, and you look very good. But when sometimes you got to go and fit into another side and play a different kind of role, maybe that's not something that suits you. So they want to see whether he can be part of that team, because you can't have all the players. You could have 5 great bowlers, but they can't be bowling at the top, right? Or they can't all bowl with the new ball. So what role is he going to play? I think the strength that he really has, apart from bowling, that he said, is his batting. I mean, whatever little that we've seen this year, he just hasn't had the opportunity, or maybe Rajasthan doesn't look at him. They haven't used him well. They haven't won games, but there are games that he hasn't even walked out to bat. So batting is something that would probably give him probably a bigger tick to get into that England side rather than bowling, because they've been pretty okay.
Another example for them is Ben Stokes, isn't he? I mean, he was brilliant for Pune. And then all of a sudden he's been thrown into this equation of Rajasthan. And over the last 2 years, probably hasn't been at his best. And there you look at a guy, brilliant performer for England, unbelievable for Pune. But now he comes into a new side, hasn't really settled into the role that they require from him. And that's what could happen with Archer. And going into the World Cup just a month away, can you afford to take that risk when you're going in as the favourites and you've got guys who've done the job already? I think that'll be the struggle for them.
Well, these numbers that we promised you in terms of phase-wise bowling for both Jofra Archer and, on the other hand, Kagiso Rabada. And this is what, again, we've identified key overs in a T20 game, and therefore we've now just divided up into power play, middle overs and death overs. And just have a look at these numbers.
Yeah, when you look at those, you say to yourself, KG, it's a bit surprising that's his stats up front, because he is a guy who can take wickets up front. But where do you want your guy to come good? Where do you want your gun bowler, you want with all the experience to come good? You want him to be there at the death overs. He's the kind of guy, when you talk about how Dhoni finishes games in the T20 format, there's your man who's got them over the line in the super over, and his death stats are very impressive. Archer, on the other hand, is very impressive up front. With the new ball, he gets the ball to bounce, and then his figures at the back end have been good as well. So I think the middle period, that's where you've got to try and work out. Have England got death bowlers, for example? Have they got guys who bowl up front? Maybe he has to bowl in the middle overs, and that's not really a strength of his. Whereas KG is pretty adaptable.
And he's kept the middle overs very quiet as well with that economy rate.
Yeah, they don't use him too much in the middle, do they? Just the 42 deliveries that we've seen him bowl. Maybe they'll turn to him if they need to pick up a wicket or something along those lines. But they want him to try and strike up front, and then they want him to come good for them and try and close out games at the back end.
Yeah, you just briefly mentioned Ben Stokes over there. This is going to be a great rivalry. It's going to be a big send-off for him in that sense. So again, how do you approach this when you know that you don't have too many games to go and you know you're leaving? Do you try sometimes too hard to want to finish on a high?
Look, yeah, I'm sure he's been trying, and what surprised me in the last game with Rajasthan was Ben Stokes had that bad over, last one
then
over. And then he didn't bowl the next game. He played the game. You had a change of captain. So how can a bowler he may have had a bad day, but he's not gone from all to zero. But that's how these teams strategize these days. They make a plan that you're going to bowl a certain number over. This number is going to be bowled by you. This number is going to be bowled by you. So I'm just presuming here that before they came onto the park, they decided, okay, Ben Stokes not going to bowl. Because how can you not get a single over in? And we're talking about an all-rounder. You go into that auction, you buy him as your marquee player. He plays the first few games as your marquee player. He bowls an important over, and he was bowling your last over in every game. And suddenly from there, he's gone to not a single delivery in the next game. So I don't know what he's thinking. All he must be thinking is, or maybe they want him to get fired up. It could be a plan where you say, okay, let's not give him a single over, and next match he'll come back firing. And so what is being thought in that team is very difficult to understand. With Rajasthan, it's impossible. But Ben Stokes, certainly, he's a player of quality. He's done well in his life. There will be a pride that he has. I'm sure he doesn't want to go home without a performance, because he'd want to come back next year.
Which is why, forget coming back next year, which is why if you look at Ben Stokes last year versus this year, he was lethal at times, and a quick comparison already tells you the difference you can see between 2018 and 2019. He got those runs there. He's just not had enough with the bat, and definitely not enough with the ball this time.
Yeah, as Ben Stokes, as Ajay said, he's a guy who's going to be proud about what he performs and what he produces. 16 average, 196 runs, just 8 wickets last year, economy rate. Bowling wise, this time around 6 wickets, economy rate of over 11, and only 104 runs in his 7 outings. He won't be happy with that. He won't. He sets high standards, and as you mentioned, he'll want to put in that last performance more as a reminder to the people that, hey, hold on, this is what I can do. There's been this tournament so far. 2 for 39 in that game against Chennai. Unfortunately, he didn't finish the game for them. If it had been 2 for 37, it would have been a really good outing. 28 with the bat, but no massive scores. No, the 46 of 26 against Chennai when they played them at their own ground was something that he'll remember. But you normally walk away from an IPL tournament with a kind of player that Ben Stokes is thinking, do you remember that knock, or those 3 knocks, or do you remember those 2 bowling performances? There hasn't been anything that's really stood out for him, and that's why he'll be a little bit disappointed. And maybe he's thinking, I'll save them all for the World Cup. But as a South African, I hope not.
Yeah, even when he played for Rising Pune Super Giant, one giant, you could see he was outstanding. He was getting that role to play. He knew his role. He almost enjoyed playing under MSD.
Yeah,
even though MSD technical is not the captain all the time.
And actually was Steve Smith there.
Same.
And I think he's one of those players. He enjoys being in that limelight. He wants to play those important moments in the game, whether as a batsman, because he's not one who comes in and scores 40 or say 40 ball 60, but he comes in and scores those 20 ball 35, or when you're chasing, he holds the innings together or bowls those important overs. So the key moments, like he said against Chennai, that if he hadn't given those last 2 runs, maybe that would have looked good on that CV. But at the moment, it's gone the other way. Mahendra Singh Dhoni last night had a fabulous game, but ended up on a losing side. But when you're doing well and you've had a good run, then it doesn't play negative on your mind. Then it still stays positive and says, okay, next time it'll happen. But I think Ben Stokes probably in that cycle where he's thinking, oh, next time it won't happen again. And that is the cycle that he's probably been on, and maybe that's the reason that they didn't bowl him.
And when you pay that amount of money for a guy, an all-rounder, you're looking for something. You basically, as a management team, you think to yourself, okay, well, if we get him, let's say he's going to get 2 man of the matches, or maybe 3 man of the matches throughout the tournament. And that's what they're looking for. They haven't got it this year round. Next year's obviously another opportunity, but this is his last chance to shine.
Yes, the other all-rounder who's, remember, back into this side is Chris Morris, coming in for Sandeep Lamichhane for the Delhi Capitals. Now let's get the inside story from Shaun.
Inside
trading. From the South African perspective in the World Cup, was he always someone who would have been in the reckoning?
He's always someone who's been in the reckoning, but to be honest, he hasn't been included in... I think he went to Australia was the last time he was actually included in an official one-day squad for South Africa, and that was about October last year. And then since then, he's just been playing the T20 format. And I think he's had a bit of a fallout maybe with the management and what they expect from him. He's a guy who's got that potential to be a world beater. You see him with the bat, play some innings, and you think, gee whiz, that's brilliant. And then with the ball, he gets bounce, he gets shape, he picks up wickets. You think he can be a superstar. He hasn't turned into that as yet for South Africa, and I think that's been the disappointment. And then from their side, they might feel like they've been let down a little bit by the way he's performed, rather than just looking and saying, well, let's just take what we get from him. Even if it's not a superstar level, it's still good enough to do a decent job at the international level. So they've left him out of the preliminary squad. There's been a lot of discussion about it, but I had him in my squad. There was the one person I did include compared to the 15 that they've picked as a preliminary, because I do feel he does give you a bit of X factor, and he's not going to play all the games. He probably played 2 of the World Cup games if he gets an opportunity, if people get injured. And with the experience that he's gathered in the RPLs and the different competitions, I think he was the one to talk to. They've gone for Nokia, who's only played 4 one-day internationals full stop. And was under a bit of an injury cloud, didn't come to the RPL because of that shoulder injury. But I think the thing for Morris too is he hasn't kicked on with his batting. We've seen some explosive innings from him in the years gone by, but we haven't seen anything from him this time round. And
that's what we've had from him this season.
Best of whatever, but that's not that impressive.
Yeah, and we remember him being explosive. And when you talk about X Factor, sitting on the outside just as a fan of the game, you'd look at him as a guy you'd want in your team because he's always trying. He's got those eyes. He's going at the opposition. And we've seen him when he's played for the Delhi Daredevils. He's had some explosive knocks.
Yeah, the energy that you talk about, I think that's what he brings in special. Any stage of the game, he's doing that. And what saddened me the other day, the last time he played for Delhi before this game, when he got out in the walk that he had back. You'd never seen him like that. You see, and he almost walked back, was dejected. Maybe he knew, not about this, but that if he didn't do well, South Africa wasn't going to.
The squad had already been announced.
So he wanted to probably come out there and do something, and you saw him walk back, and you never see that with him. He's had bad days before. We've seen him in the last couple of years. He's always full of energy, and that spreads in that team as well. So if his energy goes down, then it probably affects the team. But if they brought him back, there must be something special that we're going to see today, because as a player, I always feel there are moments where the pressure, or you feel whether it's going to happen or not, doesn't get you. Some people don't get the best out at that time, and then when everything's lost, you suddenly come out and everything is expressed. And the last year when Delhi was struggling, he was the one holding fort at the end when everything was lost. So I'm just hoping that he's one of those guys that when everything's lost, he comes out better and fighting, and we might just see that today.
It might also have been a team strategy where they're saying, listen, Chris, you've got to perform better than what we've seen from you. We're going to sit you out this game. and give you a chance just to think about it.
And then toss you the new ball next game.
Yeah, it's okay. Now we're back. We believe in you. Come on, get out here and do us a job. So we're interesting to see how he goes.
Yeah,
little sub stories.
Yeah, little sub stories. Look for the body language of Chris Morris probably walking out there, because they're going to be bowling first. Maybe throw him the very first over and see what he does against the Rajasthan Royals, the unchanged side. Well, before we get to our little contest here for the MPL Super Couch, let's also get you today's joy factor question. Is it going to be a tough one for this first NH8 derby? And it looks like it's not that tough. He made 2 centuries in a crucial 93 in the finals to help his team win the Ranji Trophy in the 1990s. Then his Test debut before playing a single Ranji Trophy game, and his ODI debut with 2 others on the same tour. So lots of factors, lots of points to ponder. Just give us hashtag Cricbuzz Live, send in the answers. We've got a lot of people already filling in that been told to give a little hint, but maybe we won't give it. Oh, of course we can. It's a local hint. He has a Cricbuzz Connect. Why not? When it's a connection to all of us, we should always give that hint out. Now it's a very important thing, which we're not going to give any hints until the numbers come out, gentlemen. It's the Rajasthan Royals. The first time these 2 teams have faced each other. It's in Jaipur. We don't know what kind of a score because the surf is looking a little bit different.
It's looking better, isn't it? We've heard everybody saying better.
Better always.
But we get done by those pitch reports.
I never trust them, especially if it's my friend Sanjay out there. Never.
It's his mate, Graham Smith today.
But I saw the shine, and this is a very good pitch generally. Taposh does a great job, and so I think 180 is not going to be enough.
But what's your figure?
That's my figure.
180.
That's the average figure.
All right.
You're going for 180?
He's taken the 180.
Oh, sorry. You can go first.
No.
You're the guest.
I'm just trying to think. Graham was talking about there's some grass for the seamers and some dry patches for the spinners. I'm going 175.
Gross, he says, 175 gross. Well, what will the men in pink do? Do I go up or do I go down? It's terrible to go third in these kind of scenarios, but in this case, I think I'm going to trust Chris Morris to come hard. KG Rabada is going to do well. Amit Mishra with his leg spin, even without Lamichane. I won't make it a mouthful. I'm just going to go lower. I'm going to go 164. I'm going to go 164, and we've got a 175 and a 180. So 154 to 190 is the gap for us to have an MPL Super Couch at the halfway stage. Cricbuzz Combox at the 10 over mark, and then MPL presents Cricbuzz Combox to wrap up everything at the halfway mark.